We are back with another video on what to do with your scraps. You've been loving all of the master boards I've been creating, the transition of envelopes into junk journals. Well, today I am taking you through junk from a label off of a t-shirt and making snippet rolls. But before we get started, I actually have a fun, exciting giveaway as well. Ana Luisa reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in doing a collaboration with them. I actually love their jewelry, and I have on earrings that I had purchased separately prior to this collaboration. They came in my FabFitFun box. For my everyday, this is what I just leave in, and I've been wearing them for months, and they're so comfortable. I'm so happy with them. So what is it that we are giving away? Well, the first thing that I have here is a paperclip bracelet. So this is the one that I have chosen for myself because I'm always working with my hands and I never am one to do my nails. At least a bracelet would be something to dress up my videos a little bit. But the one that we are giving away today is this gorgeous heart shape bracelet. So the reason why I thought this one would be perfect for my viewers is because I have so much love for you. I'm so grateful for all of the support and great community, and it's wonderful to connect with other paper crafters. So I thought I would share the love and do a contest. And the instructions will all be down below to participate in this giveaway. So a $65 value. If you are not the successful winner, there is also going to be a 30% off below for any purchases from their website. They have free shipping in the US, and I've really enjoyed their jewelry. That's the contest. Comment down below and let's get started with the creations. These shirts come from Old Navy, and you've probably seen this same sort of sticker on many different clothing articles. But I thought, since I had just purchased so many new shirts and I had peeled off the labels, I was thinking, what can I do with this? I had actually been inspired to create snippet rolls coincidentally, and the idea of combining the two things together seemed like a perfect marriage. So I've got 5 different stickers, and they have a very slight stickiness to them. So I will go ahead and actually add a little bit more glue to them as well. This is my pile of scraps. I keep all of my little tear-offs in this container, and I find that it's useful for pulling out when I need to do a project from my scraps. Inside of this, I have a variety of different things. This that I'm using right here is a wrapping paper. It was actually a crate paper scrapbook collection that they created a wrapping paper book of as well. And that music paper is perfect. I really love it. This is from my Daphne's Diary magazines. Most of my scraps in this book are from Daphne's Diary. It is one of my favorite magazines right now. I actually have a dual subscription. In Canada, we can purchase them at Indigo and Michaels, but it's much cheaper to subscribe to them through ExpressMag. It's only $100, just over, I think $102 for the year for an annual subscription. And that would give me, I believe, 10 issues. They don't come out exactly every month, but it definitely is a beautiful magazine. I'm so excited every time it arrives. I'm waiting for another copy of my magazine to come in the mail. The Canadian subscriptions come out much less quickly than the regular subscriptions because they're not based in Canada, so it takes a long time to get here, but definitely worth the wait. And because I went on Daphne Diary's website and purchased a bunch of magazines, I actually have a huge backlog of magazines to read and work with, and I did get duplicates of those as well. So the other thing that I am using here are book pages. When I make an altered book for one of my junk journals, I cut the insides out, and then I reuse that whole interior of the book, one as a landing place for when I use my awl to actually poke holes in it. And then the other thing I do is I use the book pages for little projects like this. And I'm finding that that's a great way to get use out of that. So you can see the method that I'm using here. I just slowly take piece by piece and put it all together. There's no rhyme or reason, there's no thinking about it. You just have to start putting things down and see what looks good together. The great thing about it is if you don't like the way that something is looking, that you can always cover it up. I found this stamp. It was actually at a yard sale, but it was being given away free. There was an entire box of secondhand things that they thought didn't have any value, so they were giving them away, and they included things like patterns for clothing and a stamp collection book and all kinds of fun little paper items. So I scooped that up, and I took this one stamp out of the collection because of the colors. I was really drawn to those pinks and purples. It's kind of an unusual color maybe to see on a stamp, but because I was so drawn to it, I kept that aside, and it's been sitting on my desk waiting for the perfect project. You can see that I use the words in a bunch of random different ways. Sometimes I'll put them so that they read right to left. Sometimes they'll be upside down. Sometimes they'll be vertical. And that randomness of using different fonts and different directions is what really gives this project a fun look to it. So I think I've got this one pretty much the way that I want to. I'm going to be adding many more layers on top of this. This is just the beginning stage, but I had completed that one, so it's time to move on to the next one. Previously, I had made a video where I sped up the process of my creations, and a lot of people complained that it was too fast. And I definitely respected a lot of the comments that they were making. Some of them said that they were new to the craft and they couldn't follow along as easily with what I was doing. Some said it made them not feel well, which I can totally relate to because I have that same sort of problem when I watch video games. If my kids are playing video games, I cannot watch the screen. It makes me feel almost motion sick sort of thing. But comment down below, how do you prefer to watch these kinds of videos? Do you like this real-time, very slow, relaxing sort of way to see every step by step of how I make a project? Or do you prefer things to be sped up? I've done this one real time, and I'm letting you have a chance to see every little aspect of what I do and actually how long the project took me to complete. So I let the papers here be my guide. I decided the color scheme for each individual one would be a little bit different. So with that, I would pull in some different colors. So that first one, I did a lot of pink and pastel, purpley kind of tones. And on this one, I'm going for more natural sort of colors. And you can see how I have the choice on these papers to choose which part of the papers to use. And because you're only using just a little tiny section, I avoided the blue and gravitated here toward the yellows and browns. The paper that I'm actually using here came from the Daphne's Diary magazine, the last issue that I got from them, I think. And I really love that floral piece of paper. These are my specialty papers, and I am so glad to finally be using these. I have had these saved for decades, actually. I was going to say for at least 10 years, but it's been longer than that. I got them from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and these are beautiful textured papers, and I'm not sure where you would buy something like them now. That definitely came from a specialty Japanese paper store. They have an extremely beautiful look to them and color, and I really love the softness that they give to my pages. But you could actually use something very similar if you were using any other kind of textured paper. A really good example would be tissue paper. That would provide that same sort of softness that this paper does, because you can see how it kind of just melts right into the scrap papers that are there. And this one is fun here because it has little pieces of bark actually in the paper that is a strong look to it. So that softened look of that background paper mixed in with those specks of natural paper, which plays well with the natural theme I was going for in that little snippet. I originally thought that I would do a snippet roll and basically stitch them all together at the end, but instead of doing one long length, because I have decided to do a variety of different colors and I really liked the size and shape of the end product, I decided to just keep them the way that they came out instead of sewing them all together. But that definitely is something that you could do if you weren't using them right away, you wanted a longer version, or if you wanted easier storage solution, you could just sew them all together and then roll them up at the end. So here I'm using the other part of that paper I ripped earlier and now focusing on the blue-greens of the paper. And you can see how it doesn't take a lot of material to work with to have lots of things to complete this project. So you can see with that piece there, I had a bit of a straight edge, and instead of using that straight edge facing outward, I always make sure that the ripped part is facing outward, because that harsh line will get covered up by other pieces of torn paper that are coming ahead here. And the other thing that I'll do is, even though that bottom piece is already sticky, I did put a little extra glue down just to pick up the top of that paper where the page will sit on top of, but it isn't sticky there. So I'll just come in with glue and make sure that everything is sticking. Although honestly, you probably don't even really need to do this step, because I am going to go in after and stitch everything together. So that's going to hold everything as well. But this definitely makes it secure. So you can even see on that piece that I tore there, some of those beautiful little threads coming out of that paper. It's really quite pretty. So this is just the first step of the project, and you can do so many different things. I had so many ideas. I could have just kept adding layer after layer of different types of materials. This one here, I decide that it's a little bit too colorful for the piece, so I'm not going to add that piece on there. I'm going to go for some of these softer tones, and you can see here, that's the water that I'm pulling out. Now, when I read my Daphne's Diary magazines, I actually look for patterns and colors and all of the different things, images that I want to use to keep for my scraps and put into future projects. So it's interesting how something as simple as the flowers on this cake can become a beautiful focal point for a fun project. I really like those little flowers on there as well. And so even though the scheme for this really was a lot of blues, I brought the pinks in. I'm just so partial to pinks. Blush pink is one of my favorite colors. And because I'm also going to spread that strong color throughout the top and the bottom, it kind of ties it in to create a more unified look for the whole piece. So these are great. They are sticky, but as you can see, even when they stick to themselves, they're easy enough to peel apart. and I just run my glue stick along the stickers just to provide a little bit extra adhesive. It's almost the equivalent of a washi tape before I start. And you'll see a lot of people that will add glue to their washi tape. So this is the same kind of idea. And actually that makes me think that if you didn't have these kind of labels, you actually could use your washi tape as a background base to start with. Because you won't see the back of these snippets at all, I'm not worried about the fact that they have that red writing and the little t-shirt and stuff on the back. That will just be something that gets adhered to the paper in my book. But if it was something that you were going to be using, you could always cover that back part up with another piece. So here, because I want to put something straight down the center, I go in again with my glue stick, and that straight edge isn't something that I really want to stand out. So I am going to go through and look for little pieces that will cover it up periodically throughout to soften that stark line. Although it looks quite cute even the way that it is with that solid line, because there's enough torn edges on the left and right of the snippet. So that's my beautiful Japanese paper down at the bottom with almost like little pieces of bark. So again, this is starting to look very natural as well. And the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're creating these little collages is you want to put down like a big base paper that isn't the main image that you're trying to capture, because it's quite often largely going to get covered up. Like that piece of grid paper on the left and music paper on the right are now only just going to be peeking through, even though they were quite significantly large pieces of paper on the project when we first started. So the leaf that I'm using right now comes from Daphne's Diary, but it's actually not the Daphne's Diary magazine. I did purchase a scrapbook pad from Daphne's Diary website, and I am in love with all of the different papers that came in that book. It's very similar to the types of papers that come in the magazine itself. Like they often have this one I have in my hand, like that was one of the ones that came in the magazine. But the paper from the scrapbook book, it's the same weight, which is fantastic. It's not like a heavy cardstock, so it works really well in projects. I'm really glad with how that all works. And just going through and finding lovely little scraps to add into this. And it's funny because I spend so much time adding all these different layers, and then you'll see a lot of it gets covered up. Here I'm looking at how dark or stark that is with all those colors blending together, thinking, okay, I need some more words to soften in there. So again, just keep adding the layers. And I didn't like the word. I think it said horrible or something. It was like a really negative word that was right there. So I decided to flip the paper over. And that's a nice thing when you have a book page, it's got paper on both sides. Here's an example of what tissue paper looks like. So this piece of tissue paper did come in some sort of packaging, and I threw it in my little scrap. And you can see how I'm sort of mushing it up and folding it together so that it's kind of wrinkled. So again, it softens those images on the top that were all very bright and colorful, and it really just adds a nice touch. And then I'm going to go in with some of the same kind of white soft paper down below to just bring that effect to the bottom as well. So I'm really happy with how these turned out. If you're wondering what you could use them for, gosh, the sky's the limit. I am going to use them for my junk journal because I have so many different projects going on, and I always have a million different scrapbooks and agendas and planners and things on the go. I could really put them in any number of places, but they ideally are going to go in a junk journal because they have that same sort of collage vibe. So now we're getting to the part where I'm going to add my splashes of ink. And as you can see, I just take the top off of the spritz and I hit the cap so that it splatters down some different strong dots of color. I only am going to use the pink on these first two because they are very focused on pink, but gold I will use on all of them. I put a scrap piece of paper underneath my snippets so that they are so that the base of the desk is protected from getting any paints and stuff on it. So that is a good thing to do. And the interesting thing is, like, if you work with that same piece of underneath sort of scrap paper long enough, it will become its own scrap paper that you can then use within projects just like this. Like, it'll have so much multimedia on it that you can then use it as a layering piece itself. So these three different spritzes came in a set from Michaels. And here I'm actually spraying some of the white on top of the pages just to see what that effect will be. With it being white, I'm not worried about it being too much because it's going to be very subtle. And again, it'll just soften the project a little bit. Now I'm going to come in with some ephemera. These ephemera were sent to me in Happy Mail from a friend of mine that I have met through my channel. It's just like one of you viewers that comments on my videos, and we got to chatting, and she sends me little cards and things from time to time, and I send to her things as well. So this came from Janice, and I thought that the colors in this set and the size are just perfect for this project. Like, I love this little person that I can put right on there, and it gives a cute focal point. I hadn't really had a strong plan when I first started exactly everything that I would use to put on this snippet, but I got inspired by things that were just sitting on my desk or in a drawer when I opened it up. That always happens to me. If I have things within sight, they often end up in my projects because they offer inspiration of things where you weren't necessarily even thinking about adding them. So because this has the like seafoam green color that I thought matched well with the color of this snippet that I had here, I decided to have that square overhanging the edge a little bit. And I really like the way that that decorates the snippet. And I'm going to go in and add something over top to tie it in better with the project so that it's more cohesive. I even thought about having that balloon underneath, but I decided to keep stronger to the greens that were in this one. And it also has a little bit of gold fleck in the pom-pom and on the edge of the scallop of that hat. So that's really a cute addition. So there's all kinds of little leaves. I like when a ephemera pack comes like this with all these different little tiny pieces that you can use together. Like, I take the 3 pieces here, the 2 different types of leaves and the flower, to create a little cluster. And I'm not worrying about all the things that I'm covering up that I spent all that time putting down, because that's the whole idea. It really adds a lot to the project to have all those little teeny tiny bits of pieces, like that one piece of music paper that was so strongly the background for this snippet. You can only just see the tiniest little bit of it there. And I'm just trying to pick which color I think looks the best, and really any of them would have worked. And I'm going to glue this one directly onto the flower, and then we have another one that is done. I love that candle. That is a really pretty one. I was trying to think about where I could add it, and then I decided it really should probably go with the pink snippet because of the pink color of the candle. But you can see how fun it is to just add all the different pieces of ephemera, and I have so many scraps of ephemera. Over the years, I have created quite a few scrapbooks, and with that, I have accumulated quite a few scrapbooking products. I do use a lot of the things that I purchase, and because of that, I have a lot of little scraps left over. So this is a great use for them. I'm finding, interestingly enough, with this new world of junk journaling that I've been opened up to, I'm spending way less money on scrapbooking products or paper craft products. Like, I have so many things already that I can use from my collections. This is getting me to actually put some of these things that I have been saving over the years. I have some collections that I absolutely love so much that I've been sort of hesitant to put into use, but because I have it and I love it, I have decided that the best thing to do is to actually use it, because it just allows me to fall in love with more collections and products and then acquire them. So I encourage you to use your supply, use your stash, try to minimize the things that you buy. What I find also is that when I own something and I first get it and I love it so much, I don't want to quote unquote waste it on the wrong project. And what I've discovered is that in time, if I don't use it, I will discover that I'm sort of not as in love with the collection as I was when I first got it. So I'm trying to use things in when I am still in love with them and still worried about wasting them on the wrong project, because that tells me that I'm really going to enjoy creating with them. And as I've discovered through the years, that there's always more amazing products that are coming out that you can use in their place. So I'm just looking through all of the different pieces that are available. I kind of liked those glasses, but I didn't love the shape of them. The colors definitely matched. I considered adding on a torn circle here, but I decided against that. I am happy with that flower that is on the bottom, but it's fun to just audition different pieces and see what speaks to you, see what you like. And I like the symmetry of those two flowers, so I decide to go ahead and use those two flowers together, and it will create the final touches for this. So the next thing that I am going to do for these is my stitching element. I am going to run a zigzag stitch down the pages, and I'm going to also attach, and you could use a variety of different types of textures that you could attach. I'm going to use my seam binding to run a strip down the center. You could use a variety of different trims, ribbons, etc. When I did this heart on here, you can see that I tucked it in behind a little piece of paper that was still not glued down. So that's another good way to layer. And then I brought in a couple of these stars. Those are the final touches. And then here we are, moving on to the stitching part. So before I was sewing on paper, I did not own a sewing machine. I purchased this sewing machine. It was actually brand new in a box from a yard sale. I can't even remember how much I paid for it. It was not expensive. Maybe it was $15 or $20. And it has been the best machine. It is very simple for the things that I need to do. So you'll see what I do here is I run a zigzag all the way to the bottom, and then I push the reverse button. And look at, I'm not even steering it until now. I hadn't even touched it. I had just reversed it and let the machine do all the work. And then when it started to go askew, I thought, okay, I'll bring you back in and send you off in a different direction. But this way, when you stitch to the bottom and the top, all of those threads come out the top and they offer a nice texture as well. So here is the second snippet, and I have used a variety of different pieces of this seam binding. I love the way that it adds a texture to the project. It's already very wrinkly and it can be twisted and turned, and it doesn't add any sort of issue with whether or not it's straight. Like, it doesn't really matter how straight it is because it's already kind of haphazard by nature. So sewing it down actually does even it out, but you could still see the wrinkles in it quite a bit, and I'm happy with the way that that adds a texture. I leave a little overhang on the top and the bottom, so that is peeking out. And again, I don't make certain to follow the same path with the stitching exactly so that it's lined up and measured. I don't mind if it's off-centered. I don't mind if it's off-side. So I just move the threads to the back of the sewing machine every time I start putting my project down, just to make sure that those threads don't get tangled up inside. And here again, you can see I'm not even really holding the paper. Now I've actually held the paper in there, but I quite often just let the sewing machine pick it up and take it on an adventure. And you can see how on the right of the screen I'm using the reverse button there with my other hand and just running it back through and then pulling up the feet and pulling it out. So yeah, you don't need to be an expert seamstress to know how to sew on paper. It's all very simple and is something that I think adds the most impactful finish to a project out of anything. So this seam binding that I purchased actually is a really funny story. It came from the Scrap Cabin. I discovered her online through Shara Crane. She had shared that that's where she got her seam binding from. And after years of looking for seam binding, looking for these colors and textures, I decided to go ahead and make a purchase from this girl online. And so I spent $150 at least, I think it was. And the funny thing about it, I was so amused that after all that time of wanting this seam binding and waiting to purchase it, I discovered that she lives in a town that's an hour away from me. She is in the US and I'm in Canada, so I do have to cross the border to get to her. But it's a place that I frequently travel through. So I reached out to her and I asked her if she had a shop within the community. And she said she just works out of her home and that if I was ever passing through, we could plan to get together. So I definitely think the next time I'm going through that area of the States, I will reach out to her, put in an order, and meet her in person. I really love these seam bindings that she makes. She's very talented and offers a very unique product I've not seen anywhere else. I love the texture that it adds to this project. Although you could do this with any different kind of ribbon, lace, trim, fabric, whatever other scraps that you have. I've actually seen people make these snippet rolls all entirely with fabric. So here we are here with the final stitching, a little close-up look at how that is on top of there. Because that seam binding has like a see-through sort of look, it actually blends in very nicely with the page, and you'll see what I mean as how I don't take any rhyme or reason to make sure the stitches are lined up. I like that haphazard look. And now, as a final touch, I am going to add on a little charm, and I'm actually going to use these beads to dangle off a bulb pin off the side of each of my snippets. I really think it's fun to have a charm or some sort of other piece of metal or textured item included, and I could see actually creating these and doing a lot more than just this one. You could even punch a hole with your crocodile, put an eyelet in, and then add a charm. I could dangle a lot more things off of here. Like, the sky is the limit. I had so many different ideas, but I thought I didn't want the video to get too long, so I would keep it simple, and I would just put one bulb pin with one bead and let that be the dangle that was off the side. But this one actually I did off the top, and I really quite liked how that went together with the way that that little sprig of ribbon is still sticking out. So that's just another cute little element. I also didn't want to get it too bulky so that if it was going in a junk journal, it wouldn't add that much bulk to my book, because I tend to be very bulky as it is with the number of things that I add in. I love to layer, so that makes a big difference. I have an unboxing for all of these products. They're from BB Craft. They are a really great source. It's where I get a lot of my charms and jewelry findings from that I use for my different dangles that I create. And I did just use this one box of pink beads, but I did choose the colors of bulb pins to match. And I liked the way that that hung off the top so much that I decided to do it on this one as well. And that's what it looks like there. Then I'm going to come in with an orange one here. Because I don't love the way that the seam binding covers up the girl's face, I decided to use my tiny attacher to create a little X of staples. And to repeat that same sort of pattern down below, I did a second one, not to specifically pin something back, but just to tie that in. And I think that that, again, is another level of interest. Anytime you can add a new texture, it just makes the project more interesting. And I clip them in through the top, back, and then the reason why I have to do this is because the size of the bead doesn't go all the way through to the other side, which is fine. But if you were using something that was thinner and smaller, you could actually go from the front. This one offers a unique opportunity because I have that space that's always already open off the side with that little square. I actually can very simply just come in and use my project the way that it is to pin on that little extra embellishment. And you're starting to see that nice close up. I love those threads, how they're hanging off the top, all messy like looking. And I play around with it a little bit here just to see how I like it dangling. Certainly it will take on different shapes and forms as it sits in its book, but that's really a cute combination there. So there they are, all done. And that's such a fun project. I've got a book here, one of my junk journals. Let's just bring it in. Let's find a place for these to sit. So you can see how these would decorate the edge of your junk journal. Let's see a couple other examples here. So you can see how that would look there. Oh, actually, look at this. This could even go here. You could create, like you could even put a picture here and have that on that side. Or actually, there's going to be another side of this over here. Could go at the bottom, like that. Right there. So many fun possibilities of how you could use these on the edges of your pages. So what do you think? Wasn't that a fun way to reuse some things that would normally end up in the garbage? I am so happy to be able to have this opportunity as well to do a giveaway with you. Again, comment down below and that way you'll be entered into the contest for the bracelet from Ana Luisa. If you're interested in purchasing from their site, again, we have a 30% off coupon code down below. The link will be listed in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again next time.